Well, Alex, thanks for joining us. Thanks for talking to us ahead of the next game, of course. But 9 points on the board from the opening 4 games. Do you put that down as an encouraging start?
Yeah, you have to, don't you? Of course, you ultimately judged on results. There's other things you're judged on here as well. But ultimately, winning games of football is the precursor to all the other good things that can happen. And I think everybody needed the boost of having a good start to the season, off the back of what everybody experienced last season. So we're very pleased with where we're at the minute, but you can only then look forward to the next game, because that's the most important one, to try and add more points to our total.
Of course, you stood up, and you mentioned how pleasing it was. You stood up to a very physical side, which is effective the way that they do their business, and you didn't get bullied. Do you expect that to be the norm type of opposition in League 2 than what you would face in the higher leagues?
I do, Graham. Yeah, I think you get far less time on the ball. We've seen that in many of our fixtures this season. So it is actually harder to get your moves going and to get a foothold in games, because a lot of teams are high pressing teams, and the ball isn't always on the floor. So when you do regain the ball, you're regaining the ball from a team that's playing for territory, so it's then harder to secure it and build your own moves. Whereas in League 1, because you're playing against teams that play more football, your regains a lot of the time come from trying to win it on the ground. So you're already in a position then where you can keep the ball to try and go the other way. So it's certainly a different type of football that we experienced in League 1. It's something that hasn't taken us by surprise. We were prepared for that. A lot of our recruitment went into ensuring that we had players to cope with that type and style of football. And yeah, it'll be more of the same in a lot of games. Our challenge now is to become better at obviously controlling games once we take the lead. It's not always as easy as it sounds, because obviously it goes without saying, when you're in a lead, you're up against an opposition who are desperate to get back into the game, so therefore they're on the front foot trying to obviously force the issue. But that's something we need to look into developing next, and that'll evolve.
Obviously you've reflected back of what happened the other night, and just getting the feeling from your interview after the game and here where we are today, you got the answers that you were looking for from your team, that got you that result.
Yeah, absolutely. We got the answers we needed just in that game there. We need the answers in another 42 games now, because it's a long old slog, and we won't get the answers in all 42. We're not naive enough to think that we will, but as long as we do in the vast majority of the games that we play, then ultimately it's going to put us somewhere where we're going to be comfortable being this season in terms of league position. As I say, we're not going to make any predictions with regard to what we're aiming for yet. We need to ensure that this group grows together and gels together, and then obviously once we get to the middle juncture of the season, we'll start to have a greater idea of what our aims and objectives can be moving into that final part of the season.
Just want to focus on one area of where you pick up, even when you're watching all the national football news that comes through every day. There always seems to be quite a lot of injuries at this particular time. Players are ruled out for lengthy spells. You've had your fair share already, haven't you? In terms, I think we said there were 6 off the sidelines at the Tuesday night game. Is it improving for you though? And why do you think it is that they get these type of injuries so quickly?
I think, yeah, it's certainly been the case with some other clubs as well. You speak to the teams that we played against, I think it just is a case of, for all the pre-season work that you can do, you can't prepare somebody's body for what's to come until they really do go into that competitive environment. I don't think you can replace playing competitive games of football once the season comes, and that's sometimes a shock to the system. So muscular injuries in particular are going to be things that are more prominent, I think, when you go through the August and September fixtures, and then obviously you would hope it would level off from October onwards. Certainly we hope that's the case with us. We're hopeful that we're going to get Rob McDonald back for Saturday. That's looking more and more likely. But in terms of the others, there's still some way off in terms of having fit for selection, which obviously isn't great, because you want to be able to affect games later on through having a real variety of choice from the bench. But we don't have that luxury at the minute. It is what it is, and we'll find ways to try and combat that.
Every player's felt the same from the management team. There's no sort of favouritism in terms of where they are when they're trying to get back to fitness, but I would think that two players that must be feeling really frustrated. I had one player last year in Chris Long who's had illnesses and injury, and also one of your new signings in Charlie Colquitt. It turned out, a bit real disappointing for them.
Yeah, very disappointing for Charlie Colquitt. Charlie's going to be out for at least 3 months. We would suggest he had a huge tear in his hamstring off the back of Grimsby game, so we're not going to see him until really close to Christmas and that period, I would imagine. So obviously we're depleted in terms of having a body missing in the middle of the pitch. With Chris Long, his actual injury now is healed. As I say, that took far longer than we'd anticipated, but he's not in a great way at the minute with a severe bout of food poisoning, which means that we just can't do anything with him. So how long that will be, as I say, I keep making predictions in terms of when it's hopeful that we can see Chris Long back, but I think I'll stop short of doing that from here on in, because it doesn't look much brighter a picture at the minute as of today in terms of when we are going to see him back, because of the severity of the food poisoning he's obtained. He can't actually do anything out on the grass at the minute, and he's lost a lot of weight, so disappointing, because he's going to be a key player for us, and we've not had him obviously as part of our selection up until this point.
On the brighter note though, we spoke many times in interviews about what sort of clubman Dave Richards is, and we all saw he was there at Salford, and we all saw the other night he was out actually really in the warm-up. So I don't want to say that it sounds a bit strange this, but fingers crossed.
Pardon the pun.
Yeah, he's going to be with you shortly, and that's going to be great competition.
Yeah, if he touch wood as well, there's a pun, because we've got some wood in the background, haven't we, today? He'll be with us Saturday, hopefully Dave, if he comes through today, and also tomorrow. All the indications are that he will. He's a very quick recoverer from injuries, and he doesn't get many, Dave. And a lot of that does come down to mentality as well. I have to say, he hates not being involved, and when you've got the mentality he has, you find ways to come back a week earlier, 2-3 days earlier, and that's been the case again with him. So he'll have a splint on the area where it's affected, so he certainly won't be completely functional in terms of what he'd be comfortable with. He's had a glove specifically made so that he can get 2 fingers in one of the compartments of the glove, so he'll be ready though, and obviously it gives us the opportunity then to have some more experience in that goalkeeping department.
Let's look at the next fixture then. Northampton coming up. They're in that playoff situation last year. They started well again. Another real good test for you, and one that I'm sure you're relishing. Yeah,
absolutely. They'll be right up there, Northampton. John Brady's done a great job there. We were just watching some more clips of them this morning before we came out. They can play into runners. They play a lot of through balls into runners. They're the best in the league at that, but also they can play some nice build-up work as well that gets them up the pitch into that top third before they then look to play those balls into the front three. So there's different ways in which they can hurt you. So a lot of planning will go into today and tomorrow to ensure that we're ready for that game, because that really will be a shift up in and a ramp up in quality that we're coming up against, compared to some of the fixtures that we've faced so far. So yeah, we're going to have to be ready and face the challenge head on.
But just wrapping it all up, you're going into the game off the back of another home clean sheet. It's 3 points for you as well. Good for everyone, and a good feeling.
Yeah, our currency at home has to be wins and, in particular, clean sheets alongside that, doesn't it? Because I think that's the case with everybody. Home form always dictates how strong a season that you're going to have, and then you have to chip away at getting those away wins, which obviously are like gold dust, aren't they? We've already managed to get a couple of wins at home, a couple of clean sheets with it in the 2 fixtures that we've faced so far. If we can start with the season with a 3rd win on the spin, then everybody's going to be happy, because ultimately at home is where most of our supporters play our football live. Many can watch it online when we go away from home, but they're not with us, so it's always great to reward them out on the ground with them being with us actually physically live at the stadium. So our home form, as it's been the case with the exception of last year, has to be really strong, because it has traditionally been that way the last 4 or 5 years at this club, and long may that continue.